here, back here in this great space tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern. And be sure to follow the show on social media, as Alicia and Simone have mentioned before, at The Weekend MSNBC. But until then, Velshi continues our live coverage from Chicago. He is the man in the space. Take it away, Ali.
Good morning to you, friends, and thanks for talking about this Project 2025, this deep dive that I'm doing. My team's just literally going through it by topic and by chapter, and we're going to tell people what it is. There you go. Well, you guys have
good for us.
you guys have a good rest of your day. We'll see you tomorrow.
And before we go,
Velshi,
can we just say a quick shout out, happy birthday to the one and only Kyle Griffin.
All right, very good. I'll join you in that. Good morning to all of you. It is Saturday, July 13th. I'm Ali Velshi from Chicago. 4 years ago, as Donald Trump was preparing to nominate a third person to the Supreme Court, then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said in a statement, quote, everything hangs in the balance with this nomination, end quote. Imposing term limits, forcing the justices to adopt a binding code of ethics. Task forces and commissions have even been formed to explore these options and more, but none of these ideas have gained any real traction. But at this point, it can't simply be ignored that the members of the highest court in the land should be held to the lowest ethical standards. That's the important context to consider regarding a pair of unprecedented actions taken by Democrats on Capitol Hill this week. On Tuesday, we learned that Senators Sheldon Whitehouse and Ron Wyden have asked the Attorney General Merrick Garland to appoint a special prosecutor to criminally investigate Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas for tax fraud. The following day, New York Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez filed articles of impeachment against Thomas and Justice Samuel Alito, citing their failures to publicly disclose financial income, gifts, and other transactions, as well as their refusal to recuse themselves from cases in which they may have had a conflict of interest.
In January 2021, after the former President of the United States incited an insurrection on the Capitol in this chamber to interfere with the results of the U.S. election, Justice Samuel Alito and his wife flew an upside-down American flag, a symbol of solidarity making his refusal to recuse one of the most shocking examples of conflict of interest in the court's history.
Republicans will likely do what they can to block or discredit these efforts, but these sorts of actions, regardless of their likelihood of success, are arguably necessary in order to keep the pressure on the justices. It also shows the public that there are paths forward, even though they might not be politically viable just yet. The Senate Judiciary Committee also announced this week that it will hold a hearing in September to explore the effects of the Supreme Court's broad decision regarding presidential immunity and to decide if Congress needs to pass legislation to counteract some of the implications of that decision. As we've learned in the past couple of years, a large part of the problem with the Supreme Court has been its lack of transparency. Practically all of the recent concerns with the court, the lavish gifts, the luxury trips, the links of one of the justices' wives to January 6th, the upside-down flags, they were all uncovered by investigations. Not because the justices were forthcoming with any of this information. And we need more of that, exposing how bad the problem is, figuring out the proper to interpret the Constitution says something like that. With what we know now, it is simply unacceptable to let justices continue to police themselves. And until a viable path for reform emerges, it is necessary to keep up the pressure and keep an eye on the Supreme Court. Joining me now is Noah Bookbinder, President and CEO of Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, also known as CREW, and Dr. Alison LaCroix, a professor at the University of Chicago Law School. She was a member of the Presidential Commission on the U.S. Supreme Court. She's also the author of the book, Interbellum Constitution, Union, Commerce, and Slavery in the Age of Federalisms. Ocasio-Cortez's impeachment efforts. Historically, is this something that's worked? Has anybody tried it?
Impeachment is a really high bar. I mean, it's part of the Constitution. It's in there for a reason. But in the course of the nation's history, we've only seen one Supreme Court justice ever be impeached. That was Justice Chase back in the early 19th century. And he wasn't removed. He was acquitted. Now, there have been more impeachments over the years of lower federal court judges, around 20 or so. But impeachment, I think, immediately we will see and are already seeing becomes one more piece of the partisan back and forth. And I'm not sure it really, at this point, feels like a viable way to exercise some degree of control on the court. There are other mechanisms, but that one probably isn't the best one at the current Originally, when the court was first established, there were 6 justices. So, you know, it's conceivable to think about more justices. That can be done through an act of Congress. Term limits is another possibility that has been discussed. You mentioned the Presidential Commission on the Court. That was something that we studied in our report. And the question is, are these measures that can be taken by Congress? That presents its own set of issues and hoops to jump through. Or do we need broader constitutional reform through constitutional amendment, which, of course, is a much higher hurdle to overcome?
Noah, Allison brings up this really interesting concept, this judicial independence versus determining the scope of your own powers. Because for people who will say, hey, this is politicized, the Supreme Court should be able to make the decisions it wants to and you know, conduct its business. We're talking about 2 different things, right? Nobody is suggesting that the court should be any less judicially independent than it is. It's whether or not there's the way it works is broken.
And people don't even know that that's happening. Is this really an independent court when we have justices ruling on cases where there appears to be a clear conflict of interest, where that standard of, you know, whether a reasonable person could question their impartiality seems to be violated? That makes us question whether this is really an independent court. So I actually think some more restrictions, some more oversight would increase Americans' faith in the court's independence.
What
counsel regime always does, as we've seen in other arenas recently. One can certainly imagine the appointment of that special counsel one day being challenged before the Supreme Court. And then that's a real question about what the Supreme Court is supposed to do. In those cases, what has sometimes happened, and there aren't many cases like that, but the court has to be mindful that it is both the umpire of the whole system, that's the kind of language it talks about itself with, but it's also a branch of the federal government. And so, you know, it doesn't get to have it both ways. We've seen that tension throughout U.S. history, and we're in this moment right now, I think, where the court's independence is at stake, but also its degree to be completely uncontrolled. And so, you know, I think a lot of the time what we see with these sorts of measures, and I think here of
the interbellum Constitution, union, commerce, and slavery in the age of federalisms. Turning to breaking news out of the Middle East now, the Gazan Health Ministry says at least 71 people are dead and hundreds more wounded following an Israeli airstrike earlier today. Israeli officials say the strike targeted multiple top Hamas military officials, including Mohammed Deif, who is Hamas's military commander and the second highest-ranking Hamas official in Gaza. He's widely believed to be behind the October 7th attack. It's unclear whether Deif is among the dead. The strike hit inside Mawasi, which is an Israeli-designed safe zone, an Israeli-designated safe zone in southern Gaza. We'll stay on top of that story for you. Still to come, by now you've heard of Project 2025 and its plan to radically reshape the government should Trump become president again. I would have packed it in my suitcase to Chicago. But it's 2 volumes and 900 pages long. There is a lot to unpack in it. So starting today, we're taking you inside Project 2025.
On contact. Rolade spells relief.
Over 1 million people have put Super Beats by Human blood pressure support supplements to the test. And the numbers tell the story. We have over 80,000 5-star ratings and reviews. We're trusted by over 120 pro and college sports teams. Super Beats is the #1 selling beet brand, the only #1 doctor, pharmacist, and cardiologist recommended beet brand and for heart health support. See why we've won the hearts of people across America and get a free month supply on all bundles at superbeats.com.
Plans from HomeServe start at just $7.99 a month.
Call 1-800-355-9395 or visit homeserve.com.
This is a story about the one. The untrained eye may not see the one as extraordinary, but her goals aren't easy. She fixes, she manages, she perfects. She is extraordinary. Because for the one, maintaining this space transports her to this space. The industrial-grade product you need, plus 1 million more. Call, click Grainger.com or stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
In the last 48 hours, President Biden has ramped up his outreach to Democratic lawmakers in an effort to quash concerns about his fitness to run for re-election and serve another term. By NBC News' count, 18 House Democrats and 1 Democratic senator have made public calls for Biden to withdraw from the election. Meanwhile, in a boost to the president's campaign, recent polling is undercutting the argument that Biden has lost significant support following the debate. The survey of 7 battleground states from Bloomberg News shows the race to be statistically unchanged since the debate 2 weeks ago, in spite of the political fallout that it's produced. So no matter where you fall on this issue, it's probably wise to know what could happen should Joe Biden choose to step down. Under the party's rules, quote, all delegates to support her, a move considered safe and seamless given Biden's influence over delegates and Harris's existing candidacy on the ticket. Now, if that were to happen and Harris were to prevail at the convention, she would inherit Biden's campaign funds from their primary campaign committee. That's approximately $91 million at the end of May, since federal law states that the campaign's funds also belong to the vice presidential candidate. What's less clear is what happens to the other money that's currently pledged to the Biden campaign. Alternatively, the Democratic Party could opt for an open convention where all pledged and unpledged delegates could be free to support various candidates. This process would likely position Harris as the frontrunner, giving her an opportunity to select a strong running mate based on the results. The specific procedures for the actual vote is detailed in a document known as the Call for Convention, which calls for a simple majority of delegates to clinch the nomination. If an initial round of votes fails to determine a nominee, the superdelegates, made up of party leaders and elected officials, would also cast ballots in subsequent rounds until a majority is secured. A third scenario comes if Biden gives up the nomination after accepting it at the convention. According to the National Election Task Force, an election watchdog group, which is the far-right blueprint for another Trump term, has warned of potential legal action which are all battleground states that Biden won in 2020. Now, legal experts say there's very little chance of these frivolous lawsuits succeeding, but that's not really the goal here. The goal is likely delay the certification of the eventual Democratic nominee for president, and sow confusion and doubt in the democratic process, which, as you know, has worked in prior years. After a quick break, I'll discuss all of this with the law professor Rick Hassan and former senior advisor and chief spokesperson for Vice President Kamala Harris, Simone Sanders Townsend.
I own a lot of businesses, so my tech and my network need to keep up. Thank you, Verizon Business.
Now our businesses get fast and reliable internet from the
Your wallet definitely is.
When life spells heartburn, How do you spell relief? R-O-L-A-I-D-S. Rolaids dual active formula begins to neutralize acid on contact. Rolaid spells relief.
Her as one of the co-hosts of the great program that comes right before this one, The Weekend, right here on MSNBC. Good morning to both of you. Simone, nice to see you again, my friend. Simone, you were literally the first person I talked to after the debate, because I just wanted to understand. Everybody had an opinion on everything, and that's fine. That's the beauty of America. I just wanted to understand what actually can happen and what would happen. And I'm kind of surprised we're still talking about this so much later, but we are. So let's just address it. I tried to lay out how this could unfold, just so people who are calling for Joe Biden to step out of the race understand that's not a seamless thing in and of itself. There's complexity to it. What's your sense of how I laid that out? Is there anything we're missing?
I think you laid it out perfectly, Allie. The only delegates, again, people who ran on slates to be Biden delegates to go to the convention. 2,000 of those individuals would have to go against what they ran on to support some phantom candidate that is currently not on the ballot at convention. I don't see that happening. Stranger things have happened, but it is not there. I've talked to a number of pledged delegates today. We had the chair of the DNC Women's Caucus on The Weekend earlier, who said that her membership and the pledged delegates that she knows, she herself being one, they are supporting the president. I think the only other thing I would add is that if in fact there is some random, again, fantasy scenario that is not going to happen, but let's just say it does, and Joe Biden does release his delegates, there is a process by which people would need to get on the ballot. There's signatures you have to get from various different states, and that is governed, again, by the call to convention.
So let's talk about that, Rick, the technicality. And I think this is probably the least interesting part of the conversation, but I think people ask about it, or they may see news reports about it. So we should probably just address it. How likely are these threatened lawsuits by the Heritage Foundation, A, from a legal perspective, and B, what effect could floating these discussions about legal challenges have on the election process? And I will. This is all done by conspiracy.
Telling the counties to prepare the ballots. So right now there is no nominee. There's nothing in the law in these states that requires Joe Biden, who's just unofficially the presumptive nominee, to be on the ballot. After he's been nominated, if he is nominated, if there's then a withdrawal, then it gets complicated. Then there's a set of complicated rules and the potential for lawsuits to try to replace his name on the ballot. And then there's even the possibility that his name could remain on the ballot. And then there would be a question about how presidential electors could vote if the votes were cast for Biden, but there were actually someone else sitting in on the Democratic side.
Simone, talk to me about what role you see Vice President Kamala Harris, whom you know better than most people, playing in this moment and in the course of the next few days when you know, in theory, this conversation needs to come to an end one way or the other.
Well, I think you can just look to immediately after the president's first debate performance. And it was the vice president that was out making the rounds on the televisions and the TVs on our network and others. And it's my understanding that was not at the request of anyone. She herself wanted to go out. And so the role, I think people forget about the role. What is the role of the vice president? And the role of a vice president is, one, frankly, to be ready to do the job of president if the time ever comes that is needed. But in the absence of that, the role of the vice president is to support the president, to promote the administration's agenda, and to be a good governing partner. And if you look at just the appearances that the vice president has had, the campaign stops over the last couple of weeks and even well before, I think she is effectively executing that task as the #2 on the Biden-Harris ticket. And so she's being very supportive of the president, is my understanding, publicly and privately. And frankly, Allie and Rick, if we could just be candid, more supportive than some of the people that have known the president more than 30 years. So
no question about that. There's no talk about knives out from the Harris campaign. Rick, there are people who don't think Joe Biden should leave the race, but they are in good conscience, just making sure that everybody understands, as we are right here, saying if
not to run and opened it up would be some kind of beauty contest. That is, you'd have your network or others would have some debates. People would get to speak. They'd get to say what they think. And then at the convention, that's when there'd be a vote. There really is no time to put on any kind of primary in any state where you could, in the next few weeks, gear things up and actually have an election that would have any kind of validity as an election.
Thank you to both of you. I appreciate this. This continues to be a complex and vexing issue, and I appreciate the time you've taken to make it clear to both of us. Rick Hasson is the chair in law and professor of political science at UCLA. Is the director of the Safeguarding Democracy Project and the author of the book, A Real Right to Vote, How a Constitutional Amendment Can Safeguard American Democracy. Simone Sanders Townsend is a former senior advisor and chief spokesperson for Vice President Kamala Harris. She is the co-host of the wonderful show, The Weekend, which I watch every weekend before Velshi. It airs every Saturday and Sunday morning from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, right before this show comes on. Thanks to both of you very much. Now, for a departure from what I normally do, I will be covering the Republican National Convention this coming week, but not from the anchor chair and not from the convention floor in Milwaukee and not even from outside on the street where I'm most comfortable. I'll be on YouTube. Starting on Tuesday night, I will be hosting MSNBC's very first Velshi cast of the RNC on YouTube. I'll be watching the convention in real time, along with some of your favorite political analysts, and we'll deliver instant commentary and analysis. Join us at youtube.com/MSNBC, 9:30 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. See you there.
Oh, man, I love a good hotel breakfast.
Same.
Yeah, so close to the stadium. I managed to get the last room for $190.
I booked the last room a week ago.
I booked yesterday. One night, $140.
What?
How?
Some sites panic you into booking their last room, but they don't have all the availability. Instead, use Trivago. Trivago compares hotel prices from hundreds
GLP-1s through Ro. Connect with the provider today at ro.co/20.
Is your shower trying to tell you something? Is getting in and out of the bathtub becoming a safety concern? Are you worried about the cost of a bathroom remodel that could go on for weeks and weeks? Well, now you can have a gorgeous new bath or shower that's safer at a price you can afford with a one-day jacuzzi bath remodel.
It was done the same day. We did not have to wait. It is amazing.
I would give this whole experience an A+. I definitely wish I would have called sooner.
From soft closed shower doors and adjustable shower heads to features like grab bars and custom seats that combine safety and style.
Away. Circle is your frosted treat with a sweet kick of confidence. Circle is the effortless energy that gets you in the zone. Circle, available at Walmart and drinkcircle.com.
As Democrats weigh President
We got a couple of updates on inflation this week, and the overarching headline is that things are looking better for Americans. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is part of the Labor Department, annual inflation in America, which is broadly measured by the Consumer Price Index, CPI, fell to 3% in June, which is better than what economists expected after May showed a 3.3% increase over the same month a year earlier. Now, 3% may not seem ideal. The Fed's ideal level for inflation is 2%, but we're now back in the ballpark of where inflation was during the Obama and pre-pandemic Trump years. And we're a far cry from where inflation was at the height of the pandemic, which hit a peak of 9.1% just 2 years ago in June of 2022. It's been steadily coming down, as you can see, which doesn't mean that prices are lower. Inflation coming down means prices are moving up much more slowly. On top of that, wages continue to grow faster than inflation and have been since February of last year. However, I will say that it's only been this way for a while, so it's going to take some more time for Americans who actually feel this particular improvement. And while the inflation rate is lower for many tangible goods, there are still some areas where inflation is quite high. And you might feel that squeeze when it comes to things like rent, insurance, particularly car insurance, and hospital services. From 2022 to 2023, the Fed raised rates 11 times as a way to curb inflation. The thinking behind that is that higher interest rates cause
and that's not a secret. You know, clearly the U.S. economy has performed very well compared to sort of our advanced economy colleagues.
With inflation decreasing, many economists say that they expect the Fed to cut interest rates in September. All right, up next, Inside Project 2025, our new series exposing the right wing's plan to radically reshape the American government under a new Trump presidency. You don't have to read far into the 900-plus page far-right manifesto to discover its plans for abortion rights in America. Literally right there on page 6 in the foreword, quote, "The Dobbs decision is just the beginning."
Look out, 'cause here I come.
Have you always had trouble losing weight and keeping?
Or overweight. Wegovy shouldn't be used with semaglutide or GLP-1 medicines. Don't take Wegovy if you or your family had medullary thyroid cancer, multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome type 2, or if allergic to it. Stop Wegovy and get
keeping it off.
And I'm lowering my CV risk.
That's the power of Wegovy.
Check your cost and coverage before talking to your healthcare professional about Wegovy.
Whether you're in your 40s, 50s, or 60s and beyond, I know you're seeing changes in the skin on your body. Don't panic. It's never too late to transform yourself and your skin. And Crepe Erase is here to do just that.
Crepe Erase has been delivering smoother, firmer, younger-looking skin for almost a decade.
Did you know that Crepe Erase is America's #1 selling anti-aging body treatment system for dry, crepey skin? That's because it works, people.
The Crepe Erase two-step system is clinically shown to reduce crepey-looking skin the very first time you use it.
I just love my skin. I didn't love it before. I love it now.
And now there's big news. We're introducing the Skin Revitalizing Tool, specially designed to amplify the power of Crepe Erase.
This is the
Skin on my neck looks airbrushed. I love it.
These two code. Call or go to crepeerase.com and order right now.
We report to you that there is a deep rupture running throughout the Democratic Party.
I am not going anywhere. I beat him last time. I'll beat him this time.
Do you believe that Joe Biden can defeat Donald Trump in November?
I do.
Do you want him to run?
I want him to do whatever he decides to do.
Calls for him to bow out of the race continue.
Morning Joe, weekdays at
$140 people involved with Project 2025 once worked for Donald Trump. And roughly 2/3 of the authors and editors involved in the plan served in the Trump administration. The Heritage Foundation, the specific policy proposals with plans for how to carry them out. It includes instructions on whom to appoint, and what values those appointees should have. It lays out a vision for how to concentrate power into the executive branch, how to deregulate, decrease social services, abandon any effort toward combating climate change in favor of the fossil fuel industry, and it aims to push conservative Christian values onto every aspect of American life. And so it is vitally important that we, all of us, understand this plan and understand what's at stake. Which is why, starting today on Velshi, we are taking you inside Project 2025. Every weekend, every time I'm on TV, I'm going to dig into these pages and parse exactly what is in this mandate. Today, we're kicking it off with abortion and reproductive rights. Abortion is mentioned 199 times through Project 2025. The forward to the entire thing reads, quote, "The Dobbs decision is just the beginning. Conservatives in the states and in Washington, including the next conservative administration, should push as hard as possible to protect the unborn in every jurisdiction in America. In particular, the next conservative president should work with Congress to enact the most robust protections for the unborn that Congress will support while deploying existing federal powers to protect innocent life, and vigorously complying with statutory bans on the federal funding of abortion." Every human being possesses inherent dignity and worth. Abortion and euthanasia aims to crack down on so-called abortion tourism, instances in which women travel to liberal states to seek abortions. It proposes using the Comstock Act to prosecute people who send abortion pills by mail. It aims to take away most medication abortion altogether. Trump and the RNC-controlled RNC seem to understand that abortion is, in fact, or at least abortion bans are a losing issue for them. Americans widely and ever increasingly support access to safe, legal abortion. A recent poll found that 70% of Americans support legal access to abortion in most or all cases. States are therefore free to pass laws protecting those rights, end quote. Now, that might appear to be a softened stance on abortion rights. Many legal experts immediately raised red flags, pointing out that the anti-abortion movement has used the 14th Amendment to claim that the unborn, or fetuses, or embryos from the moment of conception are persons under the law and the Constitution, with legal rights the same as we have. To see the RNC's supposed softening on abortion as anything other than an empty strategic or tactical move is to be willfully blind to all of the evidence before us. After all, by our count, at least 7 people who wrote the RNC's 2024 platform have close connections to Project 2025.
No one should have to choose between good vision and great value. That's why America's Best is slashing their prices. During the Wise Buy sales event, get 2 progressives and a comprehensive eye exam for just $129.95. Book an exam online today.
Every day, more dog people are deciding it's time for a fresh approach to pet food. Developed with vets, made from real meat and veggies, portioned for your dog and delivered right to your door. It's smarter, healthier pet food.
Have you ever considered getting a walk-in tub? Well, look no further. Say You can take a refreshing shower all in one product. Call now to receive a free shower package plus 15% off your brand new Safe Step walk-in tub.
Call now 1-800-625-9158.
When trucks are what you do, you build game-changing trucks. Trucks that help you chase one of these.
If you feel it!
Or a couple of these.
We got twins!
We build trucks that help you maneuver around one of these.
Let's ride.
Jump one of these. And back away from one of these. We're Ram. And we were built for this, this, and this.
You don't face your fears, you ride them.
Twisters, in theaters July 19th.
Looking good, guys.
Vacations are better with the credit gods on your side.
I'm coming up!
Rewards once available to the few are now accessible to the many. Earn points for travel with Credit One Bank and live large. Only from SimpliSafe, 24/7 lifeguard protection. This exclusive technology allows SimpliSafe agents to help stop crime in real time.
Stop. Police are on their way.
For instant intruder deterrence and faster police response. There's no safe like SimpliSafe.
You know, there's this thing called age, and it sucks.
If you're over 50, imagine you back.
I love this product. I'm telling you, it works.
Instaflex Advanced is the #1 selling joint brand at GNC, but you can only get your complimentary sample by texting SECRET to 231231. Plus, text now and we'll include a tube of Instaflex pain cream for